is the colorful man, Neil himself. That's fantastic photograph. He's the Chief Insights Officer, International Wellbeing Insights. He's also a man who talks about how to avoid, reduce, eliminate stress in our work life, personal life, family life. He has been doing that for years, and we are also joined by Ivy from all the way from the Philippines. I think it's too early for you, Neil, over there in London. Ivy, it's a bit too late for her in the evening in the Philippines. She's the Senior HR Director of Acquire BPO in the Philippines. We are also joined by Mr. Ajay Lula, he's the Vice President of Finance and People Operations of GeoHaptic Technologies. And last but not the least, a good friend and a favorite of ours, Mr. Saurabh Roy. He's the Head Industrial Relations of East Geography for Reliance Jio Infocom Limited. With regret, we are unable to get Ms. Charu Ratna to be on our panel today, as she had to urgently attend to some emergency situations. Godspeed, Charu, and the rest of the family. Having said that, I'm more than happy to hand this over to Neil, who's going to lead the session and take this forward. Neil, how are you doing, mate?
Wonderful. It's a bright early morning. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to get into this subject, an important subject, and one which wasn't even on our radar 7 months ago. So I think it's really important that we have this very topical discussion.
Excellent. I would like you to take this away, and if you can, and start your discussions the way you have planned it, the way you would like to do it. So I'll leave it to you.
Great, wonderful, thank you. So just to get started, obviously I appreciate the introductions. Just to give you a little bit more background on ourselves, and I'll give our other panelists an opportunity just to introduce why they're here. You know, why our audience should take a moment to engage with some of the things that we're going to be sharing. Because the reality is that how many people listening today have found that well-being and wellness more significantly impacted since this global crisis started?
Excellent. I will put that up on a poll and let's try and get answers.
Excellent. Well, I've got a couple more questions.
All right.
How many find that the world is a radical communicate, the way that we work has changed significantly over the last 6 or 7 months?
Okay.
But on the flip side, how many people feel like, you know, this is no big deal?
Okay.
I think these are things for us to consider and reflect on as we go through the discussion. So our organization, there's two sides to what we do. We are an NGO. The Stress Management Society is an NGO. We've been around for almost 2 decades now, essentially to help to create a happier, healthier, more resilient world. We have a commercial consultancy arm called International Wellbeing Insights. We do sort of global research and consultancy projects. We do culture change programs with organizations, really helping them to understand the impact that health and well-being has to people, to the culture, wellness in general, and the physical environment, and the interplay between those facets. So today my role is to moderate, to support my wonderful panelists in ensuring that we're able to deliver something that people can take away and actually do something with. I'd like to go around. Ivy, would you like to say a few words about why you're here today?
Absolutely, sure. Thank you everybody for having me. It is mid-afternoon in the Philippines. We're 2 hours apart, and I am here because this is what I do every day. I didn't think that HR would be wellness and crisis management, if you will, at that. But we're here, and yes, you were right, Neil. We were not prepared for this. Nobody saw this in the crystal ball, right? There was not a book that's written that would say this is the future of HR. And so I share my everyday experiences and learnings, difficult ones, but also to learn from my fellow panelists and also from the attendees of today's session. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you as well, Ivy. Ajay, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you. Morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. I think I completely agree. None of us were prepared for this, and I think it's all about whatever we've part of it successful, part of it we are learning from our mistakes, and then basically trying to make successful. And I think this discussion is all about that part. It's about sharing our experiences in terms of what we think works in each of our geographies. And I think that's why probably the panel is also spread across the world, all the way from London all the way to Manila. So it's basically, I think it's great when global leaders like us can actually come to a common platform and share our experiences and effectively then obviously learn from each other, because these could be the smallest of things that you think may have not worked or may have not even occurred to some of us, and probably are the solutions for how we can make this a better one.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Shara. Oh, you're on mute.
Am I audible?
There you go.
Yeah. So hi, good morning to everyone, all the panelists and all the viewers out there. The reason I decided to join this session today is, working as an industrial relations manager with a telecommunications-based company. We have been firefighting day in, day out COVID situation since the last 4 months, and most of the companies we are working with, already have an emergency plan in place. But when something like this hits, it becomes very difficult to suddenly, get into that phase and start firefighting, right? And then there are tons of people out there who are also facing similar scenario. So I wanted to reach them out and share my own learnings with them, so that we use this platform for sharing the learnings for a larger benefit of all. So I would say, Neil, that in your case, like you've been a wellness officer, how do you see this thing going ahead?
Well, I think before we get to that, I think let's just establish the context of our discussion.
Yep.
That we're here to talk about the post-normal or the new normal. These are phrases that I'm hearing every day. Everyone is talking about the post-normal, the new normal. Before we get into what do we do about it and how do we address this, I think let's just clarify what this actually means. And I'd like to share from my perspective that there are many people I come across that have this romantic notion that things will go back to the way they used to be. Like in a few weeks or a few months, everything's going to go back to normal. Life will return to how it used to be in 2019. I'm sorry to break this to you if that's what you believe, but that is not happening anytime soon. In fact, there's a very strong chance that is never going to happen. This potentially is a permanent shift in the ways that we live, work, and communicate. When the Soviet Union collapsed in the 1990s, the American military coined a phrase, an acronym they call VUCA. They described it as a time of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. If that's how they described the 1990s, I think what we're experiencing now is 10, if not 100 times more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous than it was 30 years ago. We don't know what's coming. There is no precedence. As Ivy said, there is no book written that we can refer to. In fact, the only precedence we've got for this current situation is Hollywood or Black Mirror on Netflix. And if we are to believe what Hollywood tells us, then the next thing we're all going to turn into zombies and aliens will attack. So, and that, as crazy as that sounds, if I said to you 8 months ago, the global economy is going to collapse, everyone's going to be under house arrest, we aren't going to be able to see and move around, we're going to have to wear masks, you would have laughed at me. You would have said I've been watching too many movies. But this is the reality of the moment we're in. So when we are talking about the post-normal, we are in an episode of Black Mirror. So we need to think quickly, radically, and be very prepared to act in ways that we wouldn't have even considered in the past. So this post-normal is this new way of being, which is likely to be here permanently. So I just wanted to establish that, let's just get away from this idea that things are going to go back to normal. It's not going to happen. So how are we preparing? What do we need to do to equip ourselves? And Ajay, I have a question I would like to throw to you. So, whose responsibility is it to prepare us for this new normal? Whose role is it? When it comes to, from an organizational perspective, when we're looking at things like policy and governance issues, is it down to the individual to look after themselves? Is it an organizational thing? Is it a C-suite thing? What are your thoughts around this?
I think a very valid question, and I think something that we obviously are seeing every day. So who's actually going to be leading this, right? like I said earlier, right? There's no book that we can follow. There's no rule 101 that, what, just do these 101 things and you're absolutely fine. I think it's going to be a joint responsibility across all levels in the organization, primarily led by leaders, because the leaders will actually be able to look at it from a larger or a bigger picture. But I think each and every individual basically is going to form the entire chain together. A couple of things that, what we did literally was that we fortunately or somehow were establishing a remote work policy. And I say remote work more, not work from home, because you could work from anywhere in the world, right? It's very early for us to go back and start that. We were experimenting this much before COVID, right? And somehow we then came up to the point, and that's where a couple of us took it up to go back and say, hey, you know what? If you want to survive this, there has to be some method to this madness. So Absolutely. You need basically something like a remote work policy. And when you say a remote work policy, it actually means even going back and educating somebody right down at the bottom to say, hey, is your video on? Do you have ample bandwidth? Where are you going to log in from? Keep the HR informed about it. We run a massive survey today on checking on people every day in terms of, are you healthy? Are you okay? Go back and take symptoms to go back and check, hey, are you okay? Because we run it from a central HR perspective to just go back and understand that, are you well? It's not about going back and trying to figure out, are you in office or not? No, that's not what we're trying to do. We really want to reach out to go back and say that, are you well? And that part. We then went back and also enabled our IT team to go back and ensure that, what people are now going to be working from remote. So how quick or how good are you to solving this remotely? My internet's not working, my laptop's not working. And then came up the another issues was that, which we experience now, very particularly in COVID, and we didn't realize it at that time, is people are working remote. Hey, my laptop shut down. How can I get a new one? What? Okay, so let's think about this. How do we get you one there, right? And I think those are parts that we actually learned, and those are things that are examples of what I want to go back and say is literally everyone's responsibility. I also think, while you're making a particular system, you're always going to have some of these people who are very clear. I don't want to follow it. This doesn't apply to me. I'm absolutely okay. The world's different, and I'm the strongest guy. Nothing can happen to me. And these violators effectively, in turn, unfortunately, tend to only break the system further. So there has to be a slightly different method to handle them. And I think it follows a normal, same disciplinary procedure as you would normally do for any other activity. And we need to take a step back and take a look at it as, okay, this is a situation, this is how it's going to be, and let's address it as we would have done for any other situation. And I think if you start looking at it a little bit from behind, you'll get a much more better grip of the whole situation than trying to just handle the pandemic in the pandemic. I'm saying just take a step behind and then do it. It's a lot easier.
And that's interesting, because there's a couple of points you raised there which cover the initiatives we should look at. But at the outset, you talked about kind of leadership owning it as a strategic proposition. So I think that's a really nice segue to one of the other points I wanted to really explore, which is the difference between strategy and initiative. Because often when I'm talking to organizations, like, oh yeah, we've got a wellbeing policy, we're training our managers to check in with their people and manage remote working. We've run some online virtual workshops for our staff. We've upgraded our employee assistance program, got access to counseling, etc., etc. Wonderful. These are initiatives, right? These are wonderful things to have. I would describe them as pieces of the jigsaw. But how do you know what picture you're building unless you know what the picture on the front of the box is? That is the strategy. The initiatives are the pieces of the jigsaw, the strategy is the picture on the front of the box. Very few organizations have actually put the time and energy and the focus into understanding what that new picture looks like. They say, well, we have a strategy, but it was developed in 2019. It's the wrong picture. You cannot be building a picture that was developed for a totally different world. So this is where right now, the one piece of advice I'm going to give everyone listening today is approach this in what I would describe in what we would utilize is what we call a well-being GPS approach. When you get in your car and you program your sat nav, it needs two pieces of information to work correctly. It needs to know where you are right now, not where you were last year, last week, or 10 minutes ago, where you are right now. Where do you want to get to? What is the end destination that you're heading towards? And particularly in a world where it's dynamic and fluid, that end destination may not be exactly where you intended to get to.
Yeah.
And then how can we create a dynamic route map to get us there? Because there will be traffic, roadblocks, delays, changes that will happen along the way. And this is where any well thought through strategic wellbeing program must start. Like with any HR or any consultancy assignment or any health and safety audit, it starts with the audit. Be clear about where we are right now. What's going on with our people, with our culture? What are the things that are being impacted? What are the things that are working? What are the things that aren't? Then have some sense of, what's the end destination? And then we can look at kind of what is the strategic proposition. But in going back to the question I asked you, the people that execute that could be HR, learning development officers, it could be employee benefits, it could be health and safety, it could be a whole variety of different sort of people that will be delivering and executing that program, but the ownership of that must sit at the top level. Because profit and loss, cash flow, marketing, all of these things are tied to the business plan. When it comes to people, well-being, welfare, wellness, these things are very rarely tied to the business plan, even though the most important facet of any organization is its people. So why are we not looking at our people as a strategic proposition? So that's one thing I just wanted to introduce, just to have that clarity around the difference between strategy and initiative. So, this is potentially something I'd like to throw to you, Ivy. So from a HR perspective, what is our role within this? What do we need to do, number one, to develop our people? But also, what is our responsibility above us to senior management? Because obviously we've got a two-pronged approach. Is what we need to do to influence above, and what we need to do to support the people within the organization.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because it's a question that we may not be articulating every day when we wake up, but it's the question that we answer every day these days. So, like I said, there was no manual for this, but I knew when I joined the current company that I am with right now, because I was just hired 9 months back, that my goal is to partner with a business and really help this business win. And it did not change even with this pandemic. So the challenge really is, how do you win? How do you win when businesses are shutting down, right? In the United States, a study had said that about 1,000 of companies, mid-size to small sizes, micro sizes, would shut down sometime in May and June. And that's just in months' time. So with 6,500 people in the Philippines, a business that's heavily anchored on security, information security, with very tight commercial agreements on how we protect the data privacy of our customers, how do you do that when there's the lockdown, right? But you need to operate, right? Because at the other side of the world, you have customers waiting for your service. So our CEO, I am blessed to have somebody who really owns the strategy. And he said this in our first huddle as management team. He said, we want to win this. We're going to come out of this open to ideas. And so everybody just chimed in, and we knew what we needed to do. We looked into our commercial agreements. Where can we find an opening for a different strategy or ways of doing things with our clients this time? So we made that arrangement. And after all that, when we know already that some would have to work on site, some would have to go work from home, everybody just did their part. And we also even have a ratio of how many should go there. So that's a strategy, right? Protect the business, but also make sure, because we earn money through people. I think no business would earn anything without people. We first need to make sure that people are well. So talking about initiatives, we said, okay, we're going to segregate what we're going to do per client. And then we said, okay, we need to keep the workplace secured and safe. And so we've got there our policies. That's the role of HR, right? Write the policies, make sure everybody understands it, make sure it's aligned with the laws of the land, whatever your local laws are. And we worked as well with our marketing partners to campaign for our policies, because education is super important, right? We need to make sure that everybody understands. We also extended some initiatives for those that need to work in the office. We have shuttle service. So it's an example, right? If you don't feel secured as an employee coming to work, right? What do? You need to pick them up door to door from where they are, bring them to the office, and make the office basically cleaner than their homes. Just so, they'd find the confidence that, yes, I am in a secure place. And all the contact tracing and all that, we do have systems rather that we've built through time as we learn and roll up our sleeves through the difficult learnings every day.
So Ivy,
If that answered your question.
It absolutely did. Thank you. I just want to dig a little bit deeper. Is obviously we can take actions as an organization and come up with strategies, processes, policies, initiatives, etc. What do you feel is the role of the individual? There's personal responsibility here, and we can have all the best and most robust policies in place, but it needs the people to execute and implement them. And that for me is something that I think is often lost.
Let me tell you one thing. Of all the contact tracing and all the case crisis management that we did, Neil, 100% of the cases were violators of policies. Okay. They either did not observe social distancing, did not wear their mask properly, came to work when they knew they were exposed, and of course exposed everybody else that was within 6 feet, radius from them. So it really is a personal responsibility, and I'm glad you asked that, because I think that as HR, that's the balance that we need to achieve, right? People would say, oh, I don't know this, I don't know that. And after you've provided all the information, it is about saying, hey, come here, you understand, this was the policy, you attended our session, we had our information session, it's clear that you did not follow it, so now you're gonna deal with some consequence. And I'm sorry to state it that way, but without, the reinforcement for the right or the wrong behaviors, we can't instill discipline. And discipline is the enemy of wellness.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm just going to throw in something to challenge that a little bit. The communication, in my experience, in my opinion, communication is the holy grail of any well thought through wellbeing program. Okay. And often what happens is it's not so much that the right things haven't been put in place, it's often the communication hasn't been delivered to the individual. Now, also, we are living in a world, and there's a question I've got for sure shortly after this, is that we are living in a world that is flooded with too much information and often conflicting information. There are 4 different countries on this panel. And on those 4 different countries, we all have governments with different stages of lockdown. Different people say different things, and then the same organization will say something at one point and then will change their mind and say something different. A lot of the communications that are coming out are not backed by data and science, they're backed by political sway. So there's confusion, and you only need to log on to social media or mainstream media, and there's so much polarized views in the world, which makes it very hard for the individual, because as much as I agree that we do need to all adhere to a particular way of doing things, when we live in a world where there is so much conflicting and confusing information, people don't know what to believe anymore. Mm. And that for me is a real challenge. What are your thoughts around that? Because this is where it comes down to us as leaders and within our organizations being very clear and concise around what and how we are communicating.
Look, I think it's a matter of treating our employees as matured individuals as well. This thing evolves, right? It's backed by studies most of the time, right? So hopefully we're looking at the right sources. And it's really setting that expectation that we need a feedback loop here. What is true yesterday may not be true tomorrow. Face mask, yes, then no, then yes again, right? And so it just really demands that level of understanding that there are people who devote a lot more time than we do on this, and they have the credibility to say what actually really works. So it's also about being humble at that some things may really have to change, and at once communicate that if there has to be a change.
And I appreciate you clarifying that, Ivy, because I genuinely believe, even if we don't know, it's better to say that to our people and have an open and honest dialogue than put out confusing or conflicting messages, because otherwise you have the cry wolf syndrome. When we actually have a message to deliver we need people to adhere to, it's ignored. So it's a good point, and thank you for clarifying. And sure, what I want sort of
Sorry,
post
Neil,
you.
to interrupt. If you don't mind, I'm very sorry.
No.
We're running out of time. If you don't mind, I do have a question to be asked, or if you would like to wrap this up as you wish.
Okay. How long do we have left?
Few minutes.
Okay, no problem. Well, sure. The question that I would like to pose to you, I'm concerned about key workers, irrespective of lockdown. They're the front line: telecommunications, sanitation, people that drive taxis, people that work in the medical fields. You know, what do we need to do to protect the frontline key workers, the ones that have had to continue working even in the face of this pandemic?
It is up to the organizations, the establishments for whom they are working for, because see, we are all sitting and working from home, and we are getting everything delivered at our place. We talk about food getting delivered, we talk about power through which we are getting electricity, delivered to us. We are getting, proper drinking water. So everything is coming to us, and this is delivered by people, and the organizations for whom they are working for has to definitely take the responsibility to ensure that these people work in a safe and hygienic condition. Okay, so what we have been doing, because during the coronavirus, which started in March, and then we had a huge storm which hit us in the eastern part of India in May, Amphan. Okay, so that uprooted about 10,000 trees and all. It hit the telecommunications market in a big, telecommunications tower and all in a big way, and there was a lot of disruption. Okay, what we did, ensured that our people were working in a very safe condition. They were provided PPE kits. They are being trained and trained continuously. Like what Ajay said, we have got a software through which we are reaching out to people every day, asking them to fill up a survey, saying how their health is. If anyone responds that they got fever, they are feeling feverish, they got some body ache, or any kind of other thing, a team of our doctors who are waiting out there reaches out to them, speaks to them, and starts to provide them further support services. Besides this thing, yeah, we have other bigger teams, like we have our own BPO, which is providing services to a lot of our customers. That is, we have completely outsourced work from home, so we are not permitting them to come to office. But our offices are closed. Our 10% workforce who are working from the offices, they are working from home. Rest 90% workforce who are working in the field, be it telecommunications, be it our retail workers, be it our petroleum workers, they are all working in the field, and we are ensuring by providing them vehicle support, we are ensuring by providing them disinfected, vehicles, we are providing them fresh PPE kits, we are providing them masks, and the biggest thing is we are training them, we are reaching out to them every day in their language. Okay, and you understand India is a diversified country with various languages across the region, right? So as I head industry relations for the Eastern region, every person, different states, there are about 10 states in Eastern region, every person speaks a different language. So we are trying to reach out to them in their language. We are trying to train them and their families also, so that they don't, get infected and take it back home and, infect more people. So it's a question of branding also of the organization. Because if we find out that some community gets infected because of us, then it's going to give bad name to us, right? So we are ensuring that our brand image also doesn't get affected because of this thing. And the message that I want to give out, because a lot of people are working with third-party partners also out there, right? And people are usually concerned about their own establishment, their own people. They are least bothered about third-party people. In our case, we have been ensuring that our third-party people workforce have also got the same treatment that we are, giving out to our own employees. Number one. Number two, when the spread of the coronavirus started, there was a big lockdown in India, and it impacted, the blue-collar workforce in a big way. So telecommunications and other field level people, there are a lot of blue collar workforce working out there. And what we ensured first thing was, even in the lockdown phase, everyone gets paid. So they don't have to think about their earning bread and going outside and, getting infected. So we ensured that they get paid. No one is, stopped getting their salaries or other things. That was first and foremost. We ensured that we have got helpline numbers through which they can reach out. If someone wants groceries delivered, they can get it delivered. So there are labor camps, and we are ensuring that even visitors are not permitted in the labor camps. We are ensuring that they get things delivered at the camp itself, so that they don't have to venture out. Wherever they're venturing out is only for the work purpose. The workplaces are disinfected before they start the job. So we are ensuring those things. I request other people out there who are in a similar, construction industry or similar utility businesses, they should also do similar initiatives so that if they are able to take the well-being of their people, then only they can have a stronger, more resilient establishment.
Okay.
So that is my message to people out there.
Thank you. I guess obviously we've got a shorter slot than we anticipated, so it might be worth just wrapping up. And I want to make sure that we're leaving people with something to take away. Mental well-being and mental wellness is something that may not be a priority for many organizations as they firefight and they look at how they navigate beyond this. So if we could just have maybe a few words or a statement from each of you as to why is this important? Why this should be at the top of the agenda? Why should we be equipping and preparing our people to increase their resilience to cope with the ever-increasing demands of this new post-normal world? Ivy, have you got any thoughts or comments around that?
Sure, and I'm going to do it really short with the little amount of time that we have. Our workforce is that which earns the buck. There's no other way to put it. And so we need to make sure that they are healthy, not only physically, but also here and here. Because without that, they will not fully commit to the job, and they will not give you the discretionary effort that is necessary to make your business win in these difficult days.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to add to that there's a direct correlation between the health and well-being and the mental emotional state of your employees and performance, productivity, and output. If you don't care about your people and you care about money, you still need to prioritize your people, because it's your people that will run the business. It's your people that will ensure that output remains. But also when it goes wrong, particularly in certain sectors, the examples that Shurab gave, that can lead to accidents, injuries, fatalities, and obviously that there's cost associated with that. So it makes moral, ethical, business, and financial sense. It's a no-brainer. Thank you. Ajay.
I think very clearly change is inevitable, right? So this is a change, and for us to survive, I think we got to adapt it, and that's why I think it's a very clear thing that we should go back and look at that. I think we've said all of it, and when people have definitely read through, but just a very clear message is it's a thank you to everybody across the organizations, everywhere, that we're still making it happen, and that's a classic example of how we've adapted. We haven't crumbled. We are a little slow, and in my opinion, at this point of time, because we are adapting. And if I go back to the standard contact center language that I've been a lot more exposed to in life is, I look at this that we are in our OJT phase right now, which is the on-the-job training phase, and that's why we're learning this every day, and we're learning new things every day. Let this just pass a little more, and I can assure you that we being humans, we'll get there. We'll be a better expert on this one. And at the end of it, it's always proven, I think, as humans, we tend to use our gray cells a lot more when we are under pressure. And this is definitely a great pressure situation. So yeah, thank you everybody. We're doing great. We'll get there.
Excellent. Shurab, any closing thoughts?
I would say that, connect people with the healthcare facilities out there. There are people who are into wellness. There are people who are into providing psychological guidance and counseling. So connect people with them so that they can get access to those resources whenever they feel the need for it. It may be at the middle of the night. It may be early morning waking up. Somebody gets a panic attack. Okay, today I have to go to work in the field, and the family says, no, you don't need to go because you are exposing the entire family to it. And then they need to call up and speak to people who can, take care of their anxieties, who can help them out. So that is something really important. That is something very crucial, that you have to look up to another 2, 3 months, 4 months till the time the vaccines are not out, available in the market, and everyone gets access to it. Because everyone getting access, people are thinking vaccine is going to come on 15th of August in India, and then the coronavirus will go away. It won't go that easily. It won't go that fast, because vaccines have to be available in large numbers to such a huge population out there, right? And that would take time. That would take months down the line. So people have to maintain cool, and people require that support, and organizations have to provide them that access to those supports.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I just want to finish by saying that we put together a page with free resources and tools and guidance. It's insights.wellbeing.work. So anyone listening today that would like to find some more information and just understand how to shape this so you can then create a business case to sell into senior leadership, it's insights.wellbeing.work. Over to you. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Ah, there we go.
I'm still learning from this. Thank you so very much, folks. Thank you very much, Neil. I didn't mean to take away time from you, which would have been unfair. I think we're more or less finishing at the time that we expected to. We still have a little bit of time if you wish to continue, but I have a couple of questions I thought I would ask, and I would also like to remind the audience that Neil is doing a longer version of this and other topics on Friday, and I would certainly invite everybody to tune in to make sure that you have enough time and more questions. I think I already see a lot of questions for your Friday session, Neil, so I think it's going to get a lot more interactive and a lot more deep dive, if you will.
May I talk about that? So obviously today was designed just to be an open discussion for us to just share thoughts, ideas freely. Friday's a workshop, so it's an education session. I'll be sharing case studies, examples, best practice strategies, but also some of our research. Over the last 3 or 4 months, my team have been busy doing research as to the ways that people are being impacted and the best ways for us to navigate this. So we'll be talking through that on Friday. This is all new content. This is all very relevant from working with some of our global organizations and how that they have responded in a way that has brought about measurable difference. Because ultimately, it's what we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of thoughts and feelings that are being shared at the moment that are not backed up by evidence, by data, by science. And I think this is not a time for opinions and conjecture. This is a time for us to look at what works. Yeah. And to be able to share that best practice freely, because this is the first time that, you know, there's how many different countries represented on this summit. We're all in this together. And only by working together and sharing ideas, there is strength in numbers. And I think that's the one thing that we really need to focus on is how can we support each other through this experience.
All right, great. Thanks for that. I just would like to ask you to please share that website address you just gave us. Would you?
Yes, it's insights.wellbeing.work.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that it's .wellbeing, not dash wellbeing.
No, yeah, insights.wellbeing.work.
Excellent. So very much for clarifying that. I just also thought I would share with you some of the poll results that we got. Do you feel that what we face today is going to go away very soon and that it's not going to be a problem? A resounding 89% said, no, I don't think I feel that way. And 11% have said, yes, it's going to go away, not a problem.
Okay. And that's interesting, is what we were talking about. There are people that have this romantic notion that things will go back to how they are. And this is why we really need to start educating people that don't wait for something to happen that is very unlikely to happen in the near future.
Included, Neil, to confess, even I think it's going to go away soon, hopefully. So it's more a wish than a thought. So
if that's sure, people are waiting for this magic vaccine that's going to cure everything. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. Even if a vaccine comes out in a month's time, will it be tested? Will it be effective? It takes years to come up with effective vaccine.
Correct. And to answer your other question, and no surprises here, do you feel the world has radically changed in the last 6 to 7 months? And 100% have said yes.
Yeah. That's no surprise.
That's no surprise. Anyway, that leaves me an opportunity to ask a question for you, Neil, if you don't mind. This is from one of our speakers who's going to speak. He looks like a Bollywood star from Africa. His Emmanuel Zvada. He says, I think in preparation of the future, everyone needs to think. Everyone needs to be a thinker and not leader, and not a leader. So leaders and employees give employees room to make mistakes, and through mistakes and experimentation, innovation comes and we learn. We need agile practices, agile policies, and agile people. Now the question is, how do we create agile people?
So, all right, there's a couple of points of clarification. The first one, if you had a Bollywood star from Africa, there'd be a Nollywood star. Most people aren't aware of this, that Nollywood is actually one of the largest film industries on the planet.
It's
Just a point of
third
clarification.
largest in the world, mate.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's the third largest film industry in the world.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But joking aside, the point there about leadership, I think what we view as leadership must change. We think leadership are people that have a title that says, I'm a VP of this or a manager of that. In the world that we live in today, we need to be creating, ground floor leaders. Everyone should be taking leadership responsibility.
Correct.
I don't know if any of you have come across a system of management or governance called a holocracy or a holocratic approach, which is you don't have leaders by title. People step up into a leadership position based on task, projects, initiatives, and that kind of thing. And I think for us to really be able to navigate this, don't put all the pressure of leadership to someone that has a job title that suggests that. Prepare someone to be a leader long before they are in that role. I think even if someone joins the graduate program, we should be putting them through an LDP, a leadership development program. This should be something every employee goes through. So we are then prepared for whatever comes. And I think for me, this is one of the key things. The old style of leadership and governance is dead. Those days are gone. And also that is because the challenge we have is there's a generational problem. Now, in all of the countries that are represented on this call today, if we look at someone that is what would be described as Generation Z, so 25 and below, they will have far more in common, even though they come from different parts of the world, because they're influenced by the same people, they listen to the same music, they watch the same things on YouTube, than some of us would have, because we grew up in a different world, one before TikTok and social media and Instagram and all of these kind of things. So this is where those are the leaders of the future. You have to bear in mind that what's the fastest growing social movement on the planet today? Veganism. Who are vegans? Most of them are under 30. Alcohol is fastly going out of fashion. Every alcohol manufacturer on this planet is scrambling to make a non-alcoholic alternative to their best-selling products. Why? Because younger generations don't drink. Who is their leaders and idols? Greta. They're the ones that are eliminating single-use plastic. So what you've got to bear in mind is those are the future leaders. They think differently. They operate in a different world. Now, if you are looking at the old paradigm of leadership as, I'm going to tell you what to do, we're going to face a rebellion because they don't want to be told what to do. They don't follow the same structures and same principles that we grew up with. So this, for me, is where there is a radical, massive paradigm shift in our approach to leadership if we want to have a truly diverse approach. Diversity often was targeted at racial, religion, gender, sex, sexuality, and those kind of things. The generational diversity for me is one of the biggest things. And we saw this recently with the Black Lives Matter movement, whereas in the civil rights movement in the 60s, it was people of a particular ethnic background. This is a multiracial approach, and most of those are young people who care about the same things. Unless we are harnessing and garnering that energy, then ultimately all we're doing is we're operating a dictatorship rather than really an encompassing approach and really inspiring true effective leadership.
Absolutely. So very eloquently put, Neil. Hats off to you and very well done. We're going to see you again on Friday. So I'm so looking forward to that. Thank you so very much, Neil. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Saurabh. We miss Charu, who's had to be away on an emergency situation. We wish her well. And once again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks to our panelists. Wonderful, wonderful guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Folks.